Hey everybody, I'm Dr. Todd. Welcome to the Miller Method. Today we are going to be talking about the dreaded weight loss plateau. And you may have experienced this before. If you've ever tried to lose weight, you'll start a diet or whatever it is you're doing, and you'll get good progress, and then you get to a certain point and it just stalls. And at that point, nothing happens. You don't know what to do, and you get all frustrated. I'm going to talk about why that happens and what you can do to avoid that. So, like most times, I have a little drawing back here, and I like to use these analogies to try and get people to understand the body. But here we have a tanker truck. And this tanker truck is filled with gas. And let's pretend that this engine, the cab of the truck, is actually burning the fuel that it's hauling. So it's hauling the fuel, but it's also burning the fuel, okay? And let's make believe that that truck is going to make a trip, a daily trip from Washington to D.C., or Washington, D.C. to New York City. So it starts in Washington, D.C., and it goes to New York City, and let's pretend that that trip burns 50 gallons of gas. So every time the truck goes from D.C. to New York, it burns 50 gallons. And let's also pretend that when we get to our destination, instead of putting 50 gallons back in the tank, we only put 40 gallons back in the tank. So if we burn 50, and we add 40, that means the level of fuel in the truck, in the tanker, has fallen by 10 gallons, okay? So every time I make this trip, I go from DC to New York, the net effect is the level of gas in the truck falls by 10 gallons. I go from New York back to DC, I do the same thing, it falls by 10 gallons. So over time, as the level of gas in the tank starts to fall, the weight of the truck starts to fall as well. And we all know that when a truck is, if you have a pickup truck that's filled, if the bed is filled with rock, it's going to get worse gas mileage than if the bed is empty. So the lighter the truck gets, the less fuel the truck burns when it goes from DC to New York. So eventually, instead of burning 50 gallons to go from DC to New York, the truck's only going to burn 40 gallons to go from DC to New York. So at that point, if you burn 40 gallons and you're still adding 40 gallons back, you're essentially completely offsetting the fuel that you burned with the fuel that you're putting back in, and the weight of the truck stays the same. Okay, so at this point, you have two options. If you want the weight of the truck to keep falling, you either have to drive the truck further, or you have to put less gas in when you make your stop. So what is this analogous to? This is now analogous to the body, in the sense that this truck, the tank, is your fat, okay? And the cab is your muscle. So when you start a weight program, when you start a diet program, an exercise program, you have a lot of fat on you. And you burn more calories the heavier you are. So you start taking up an exercise program and it's working good because you're in a deficit. You're burning X amount of calories, but you're probably calorie restricting, so you're not replacing all those calories. Well, eventually your weight's going to fall to the point where you're not burning so many calories anymore because you're lighter. You're getting better gas mileage because you're lighter. At that point, you have two options, right? Because your weight loss is going to stall. You can either increase the amount of activity that you're doing, or you can decrease the amount of food that you're eating, both of which are things that nobody really wants to do, right? So how do we prevent this? If you've listened to any of our videos before, you'll know that we prevent this through weight training and a high-protein diet, because the one thing that we have that is different from this example is we can increase the size of the engine. The truck can't increase the size of the engine, right? We can do resistance training, increase the amount of muscle mass that we have, and we can therefore spend more energy just going throughout our day. If we think about the weight example, if we decrease 10 pounds of fat but increase 10 pounds of muscle, the calorie content that we're burning going around doing our normal day-to-day activities is the same or higher. That calorie level doesn't drop because we're not really changing the weight that much. So this is the importance of shifting body composition rather than just getting lighter. And ideally, what we want to happen is we resistance train, increase our muscle mass, simultaneously decrease our fat mass. Also remember that as our muscle mass goes up, our resting metabolic rate goes up, which means we can eat more. So we have a different situation here than what we have in this situation, where your only options here are to exercise more and eat less. We're saying keep the number of calories that you can eat high by doing resistance training, keeping your weight not necessarily high, but offsetting the fat loss with an increase in muscle mass. And when that weight loss plateau occurs, it's going to occur at a point where you're very, very happy with how you look. Thanks.
Oh,